thought grief made people softer. I was wrong. The hallway was quiet in that way. Houses get after a funeral when the flowers are already wilting and everyone is gone home pretending they said the right things. I remember thinking I should grab my coat and leave. I remember thinking my grandfather would have hated how cold the house felt without him. Then my sister's hand closed in my hair. There was no warning, no argument, no raised voice. Just a sudden, violent pull that snapped my head back before I could even understand what was happening. The back of my skull hit the wall was the sound of surgery in my sleep, a hard, hollow crack that didn't belong in a family home. Pain exploded behind my eyes, bright and blinding. My knees gave out. I slid down the wall and hit the floor, my cheek pressed against the hardwood. The world tilted, then narrowed. I tasted blood. Brielle crouched in front of me, my older sister, the one my parents called strong, reliable, the one everyone trusted to handle things. Her face was inches from mine, perfectly calm. She smelled faintly of perfume, the kind she always wore when she wanted to be taken seriously. "You don't deserve anything," she said quietly. "You never did." Then she stood up, smoothed the front of her black dress, and walked away. Her footsteps faded down the hall, slow, unhurried, as if she hadn't just left her sister bleeding on the floor, struggling to stay conscious. I tried to move. Nothing happened. My arms wouldn't respond. My legs felt like they belonged to someone else. I stared at the baseboard in front of me, counting the tiny chips in the paint because it was the only thing keeping me from panicking. I was 29 years old, lying on the floor of my grandfather's house, and I wasn't sure if I could get up. What terrified me most wasn't the pain. It was the certainty in Brielle's voice. She didn't sound angry. She sounded finished. Like this was the last loose end she needed to tie off before everything fell into place. I understood then that this wasn't a fight. It wasn't even cruelty in the heat of the moment. It was a line being crossed, one that couldn't be uncrossed. If I stayed silent, if I let this go the way so many things had gone before, whatever came next would be worse. I lay there listening to the house settle around me, the old pipes ticking, the distant hum of traffic outside. Somewhere upstairs, a door closed. Brielle was moving on with her evening, with her plans. She believed no one had seen what she did. She believed the story would end with me on the floor, and her walking away clean. What she didn't know, what none of them knew yet, was that this house had never been as private as she thought. And that what happened in that hallway wasn't going to stay buried with my grandfather. Because while I lay there bleeding, unable to move, something else was already in motion. Something that would follow her all the way to the will reading and force the truth into the open where she could no longer control it. I wake up on Sunday morning with my head pounding and my phone buzzing on the nightstand. For a moment, I didn't remember where I was. Then the ache behind my eyes sharpened, and the hallway came back to me, the wall, the floor, Brielle's voice telling me I deserved nothing. I sat up slowly in the guest bed at my parents' house, careful not to move too fast. Someone had brought me upstairs at some point. Someone had decided I was alive enough to be put away. There was a text from my mother, Gwen, sent just after sunrise. "Are you awake? We need to talk about last night." No question mark. No concern about my head. Just a need to talk. When I came down to the kitchen, my parents were already seated at the table. My father, Mark, was staring into his coffee like it had personally disappointed him. My mother folded and unfolded a paper napkin in her hands. Brielle sat between them, calm and composed. Her hair brushed, her makeup perfect. She looked like someone who had slept well. "There you are," my mother said. "We were worried." It wasn't the right word and all of us knew it. She gestured toward the chair across from them. I sat feeling the stiffness in my neck pulled tight. Brielle didn't look at me. She didn't have to. This wasn't my stage. "Your sister says things got out of hand last night," my father began. "She says you were upset about the will and started accusing her of things that aren't true." I waited. I had learned to wait. Brielle sighed softly like this pained her. I tried to calm her down, she said. But you know how Lauren gets when she feels left out. She gets emotional. My mother nodded immediately. You've always been sensitive, she said to me, not unkindly. As if that settled it. Sensitive, emotional, difficult. The words were old friends. I thought about all the times I'd called home over the years and been told they were busy. The holidays I learned about afterward through pictures Brielle posted online. The birthday cards I sent that were never mentioned. I thought about how often I'd wondered what was wrong with me that my own family seemed to tolerate me rather than want me. Brielle had always been the capable one, the organized one, the daughter who remembered to send flowers and manage details. When my grandfather's health began to fail, she stepped forward without being asked, offering to handle the paperwork. My parents praised her for it. They didn't notice that in the process she became the gatekeeper to everything that mattered. Let's just get through tomorrow, my mother said. The will reading will be hard enough without more drama. There it was, tomorrow, the thing we were all orbiting. I looked at Brielle then, for the first time since the hallway. She met my eyes briefly, just long enough to let me see the certainty there. Whatever she had planned, she believed it was already done. I don't want drama, I said quietly. My voice sounded smaller than I felt. I just want things to be fair. My father's mouth tightened. This isn't the time, he said. Your grandfather trusted Brielle. We all do. No one asked me what had happened to my head. No one asked why my movements were careful, why my voice stayed low. The story had already been told, and it wasn't mine. I went back upstairs after that. The conversation closed as neatly as a file folder. From the guest room window, I watched Brielle load something into the trunk of her car, folders maybe, or boxes. She moved with purpose, like someone clearing the last piece of a job. As I lay back down staring at the ceiling, a thought settled in with a dull ache in my skull. This wasn't new. Last night hadn't changed the pattern. It had only made it visible. And if my sister had been shaping how my family saw me for years, then whatever waited for us at the will reading had been shaped too. By Sunday afternoon, the house had settled into a careful kind of quiet. My parents were out running errands, the kind they always did when emotions felt inconvenient. Brielle said she needed to take a call and disappeared upstairs with her phone. I was left alone in the living room with my grandfather's house, my head still aching, my thoughts moving slower than usual. That was when I noticed the cabinet. It sat against the far wall of the den, just beneath the framed photo of my grandfather holding a fishing rod, squinting into the sun. He had kept his important papers there for as long as I could remember, not because it was especially secure, but because he liked knowing exactly where things were. The cabinet door was open. It might have meant nothing. Anyone could have opened it while I was upstairs, but something about it tugged at me anyway. The way a wrong note does when you hear it in an otherwise familiar song. I stood carefully and crossed the room. The dizziness had faded to a dull throb, manageable if I moved slowly. Inside the cabinet, the file folders were stacked neatly enough, but the order was off. The blue folder that used to sit on top, tax records, I thought was now buried halfway down. A manila envelope was missing altogether. I knew that envelope. My grandfather had shown it to me once months earlier after dinner. He hadn't let me open it. He'd only tapped it gently with one finger and said, "This is just in case someone forgets who I am when I'm gone." I hadn't asked him what he meant. He'd lived a long life. People say things like that. Now the space where the envelope should have been was empty. I closed the cabinet and leaned against it, breathing through the sudden tightness in my chest. This still wasn't proof of anything. Papers get moved. Things get packed away. Grief makes people tidy or careless or both. But the feeling didn't leave. A soft sound came from the hallway upstairs, drawers opening, then closing. Brielle's footsteps crossed from one room to another. She was still on her call. Her voice low, words too muffled to make out. Whatever she was doing, she was taking her time. My phone buzzed in my hand, startling me. It was an email reminder from Caldwell and Reese, the law firm handling my grandfather's estate. A standard message, polite and neutral, confirming the will reading scheduled for Monday morning. No mention of family, no hint of conflict, just the date, the time, and the address. Monday, tomorrow. I reread the message twice, the words blurring slightly. The timing pressed in on me. The open cabinet, the missing envelope. Brielle moving to the house with purpose, while everyone else tried not to feel. I thought back to the way she'd stood in the hallway the night before, so calm after what she'd done. I thought about how confidently she'd sat between my parents at the kitchen table that morning, explaining me to them like I was a problem she'd already solved. I closed the email and slipped my phone into my pocket. I wasn't ready to accuse anyone of anything. I didn't even know what exactly I was missing. But I knew this much: whatever my grandfather had wanted protected wasn't where he'd left it. And if something was being prepared for Monday, it wasn't being prepared with me in mind. As I turned back toward the stairs, Brielle's door opened. She stepped into the hall, phone still in hand, and smiled when she saw me below. Feeling better, she asked lightly. I nodded. A little. Good, she said. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. She went back into her room and closed the door. I stayed where I was, staring at the cabinet beneath my grandfather's photograph, trying to remember exactly when I'd last seen that envelope. Trying to convince myself that this was all coincidence. But the sense of something slipping out of reach followed me as I sat back down, heavy and insistent. Whatever had started in that hallway wasn't over. It was just getting organized. I found Evelyn Parker on Monday morning standing at the edge of her driveway with a mug of coffee cradled in both hands. The sky was low and gray, the kind of late fall morning that makes every sound carry. Her house sat next to my grandfather's, close enough that their side yards nearly touched. I'd seen her 100 times over the years, waving from her porch, dropping off tomatoes from her garden, but we'd never talked for long. She was one of those people who seemed to notice everything without ever inserting herself. She noticed me right away. Lauren, she said, setting the mug down on the hood of her car. I was wondering when I'd see you. Her voice was steady. Not curious, not alarmed. Just matter of fact, as if she'd been waiting for a conversation she already understood. I stopped a few feet from her, aware of the faint ache still pulsing behind my eyes. I'm sorry, I said automatically. If we woke you the other night, I wasn't asleep, she interrupted gently. I rarely am. She studied my face, then her eyes sharp and kind at the same time. She didn't ask what happened. She didn't tilt her head or soften her voice. She simply nodded once, as if confirming something to herself. Your grandfather asked me to keep an eye out, she said, toward the end. I didn't answer. I wasn't sure what the right response was to that. Evelyn picked up her mug again and took a slow sip. He didn't trust noise, she went on. He trusted patterns. And he was worried about the way things were being handled. The word landed between us. Handed. She motioned toward her garage with her chin. I don't want to get ahead of anything, she said. And I don't want to be dramatic. But I think you should know there are things that don't rely on anyone's memory or anyone's story. My pulse quickened just a little. What things come by later, she said. After the house settles. After people stop pretending they're fine. It wasn't a refusal. It was a boundary. I nodded, grateful for it. Thank you. She looked past me, then toward my grandfather's house. Brielle's car was still in the driveway. Curtains shifted upstairs. Evelyn lowered her voice. I won't speak in front of her, she said. I won't speak in front of your parents either. Not because I'm afraid. Because the truth doesn't need an audience until it's ready. I felt something in my chest loosen, just a fraction. All morning the pressure built in small, quiet ways. Brielle moved through the house with the confidence of someone who knew where every key was kept. My parents avoided my eyes, their conversations clipped and practical. No one mentioned the cabinet. No one mentioned the bruise I'd failed to fully hide. At noon, Brielle announced she was heading out to take care of one last thing before the will reading. She smiled at me as she grabbed her coat, the same polite smile she used with bank tellers and doctors' offices. "Try to rest," she said. "You look exhausted." After she left the house, exhaled. I walked next door an hour later. Evelyn opened the door before I knocked, as if she'd been listening for my steps. Inside her home was neat and spare. On a small table near the window sat a stack of envelopes tied with string, their edges worn soft. "I'm not here to accuse anyone," she said, as she gestured for me to sit. "And I'm not here to tell you what to do." She paused, meeting my eyes. "I'm here because your grandfather didn't want you standing alone when the ground shifted." I swallowed. "He said that." She nodded. "More than once." She reached for the string but didn't untie it. "Not yet. There are records," she said. "And there are moments that don't disappear just because someone wishes they would. We'll take this one step at a time." I didn't know what she meant. Not fully. But for the first time since the hallway, I believed that whatever was coming next wasn't entirely out of my hands. Evelyn didn't untie the string right away. She let the silence sit between us, the kind that asks whether you're ready to hear something you can't unhear. Outside her window, a delivery truck passed, tires hissing on damp pavement. Monday was moving on without us. "These stayed with me," she said finally, resting her hand on the stack of envelopes. "Not because I wanted them. Because your grandfather asked." She loosened the knot and slid one envelope free. Inside was a photocopy of a handwritten note. My grandfather's slanted script. Unmistakable once you'd seen enough of it. The words weren't dramatic, they were careful. Dates, names, a sentence underlined twice. "If Brielle pressures me to change the will again, do not meet alone." My throat tightened. "He wrote this." Evelyn nodded. "After she brought paperwork he didn't request. After she insisted time was short, she reached for something else, then something heavier. A tablet face down on the table. And there's this," she said. "This doesn't rely on interpretation." She turned the screen toward me and pressed play. The image wasn't cinematic. It was fixed, slightly angled, catching the edge of my grandfather's driveway and the strip of sidewalk between our houses. The timestamp glowed in the corner. Sunday night, the hour matched the hallway. I watched myself enter the frame unsteady. Then Brielle followed. The pull. The sudden jerk of my head. The impact. Even without sound, it was unmistakable. A body being driven into a wall. A person collapsing. Evelyn stopped the video before the worst of it lingered. "I didn't want to show you more than you needed," she said quietly. My hands were shaking. Not with fear this time. With a terrible, clarifying calm. "I didn't ask for this," I said, more to myself than to her. "I didn't want any of it." "I know," she said. "But wanting has nothing to do with what's true." I sat there longer than I meant to, staring at the blank screen. All the years of being explained away pressed forward at once, the word sensitive, the gentle smiles, the suggestion that I was the problem that needed managing. "This doesn't mean you have to confront anyone," Evelyn added. "It means you don't have to doubt yourself anymore." She was right. And that was the part that changed everything. I took out my phone and opened my email. The subject line populated itself from memory. Caldwell and Reese Estate Services. I attached the images Evelyn had scanned for me and requested access to the video file through secure transfer, as she suggested. I kept the message short. Factual, dates, times, a request to confirm receipt. My finger hovered over send. For years silence had felt safer, It kept the peace. It let me stay in the room even if no one really saw me there. Sending that email would end something I'd spent a lifetime maintaining. I pressed send anyway. The phone chimed softly. Done. Evelyn watched me with the same steady attention she'd given all morning. Once this is in motion, she said, it won't move the way families do. It will move the way systems do. I understand, I said. And I did. When I stepped back outside, the sky had lifted a little. Brielle's car wasn't in the driveway anymore. The house next door looked unchanged, windows closed, curtains drawn, but I knew better now than to trust appearances. I didn't know what would happen at the will reading. I didn't know how my parents would react when the story they'd accepted met something that didn't bend. But I knew this whatever came next wouldn't depend on whether anyone believed me. The truth had weight, and it was finally being carried somewhere I couldn't be pushed out of. By the time I got back to my grandfather's house that afternoon, the locks had been changed. I stood on the front porch staring at the unfamiliar deadbolt, my key useless in my hand. For a moment I wondered if I'd simply grabbed the wrong one. Then I noticed the faint scuff marks around the door frame, the kind left behind when someone works quickly and doesn't care about appearances. Brielle hadn't wasted any time. I knocked anyway. Once, twice. No answer. The house was quiet, sealed up against me like a decision already made. I stepped back and sat down in the porch chair, the same one my grandfather used every morning with his coffee. My head still throbbed when I leaned forward. I pressed my palm to my temple and waited for the wave to pass. Being locked out shouldn't have surprised me, but it did. Not because it was cruel, because it was efficient. My phone rang as I stood up, brushing leaves off my coat. The number was unfamiliar, local. I answered on the second ring. "This is Officer Daniel Mercer with the Mount Lebanon Police Department," the voice said. Calm, professional. "I'm returning your message from earlier." I hadn't expected the call to come so quickly. "Thank you," I said. "I wasn't sure when we can meet this afternoon if that works for you," he said. "Given what you described, it's important we document things properly." Important. Not urgent. Not dramatic. Properly. We met at the station an hour later. The building smelled faintly of disinfectant and old coffee. Officer Mercer listened without interrupting as I explained what had happened in the hallway. How I'd been left on the floor. How the locks had been changed after I spoke to an attorney. He took notes, asked clarifying questions. He didn't rush me, and he didn't soften anything either. "You understand," he said when I finished, "that filing a report like this starts a process?" "I do," I said. And I meant it. I left with paperwork in my bag, and a tightness in my chest that had nothing to do with fear. It was the weight of consequence settling in. When I checked my phone again, there was a voicemail from Brielle. Her voice was controlled, almost warm. "Lauren, this is unnecessary," she said. "You're overreacting and you're making things difficult for everyone." The lawyer called. "They said he'd been in touch. We'll straighten this out, but you need to stop." Stop. As if this were a habit I'd picked up, not a line she'd crossed. A second message followed from my mother. Shorter, more strained. "Please don't do this right now. Let's just get through tomorrow." I didn't reply to either of them. Instead, I drove to a walk-in clinic to have my head checked. The nurse frowned at the bruise I'd tried to hide and asked when it happened. Writing the date down made it feel real in a way nothing else had. Observable. Recorded. By evening, the house was dark when I passed it again. Brielle's car was back in the driveway. Lights glowed in the windows I could no longer enter. I realized then that whatever access I'd had to the house, to the benefit of the doubt, to the illusion of belonging, had been revoked. This was the part no one warns you about. Standing up for yourself doesn't feel like strength at first. It feels like loss. Like being cut loose from something familiar, even if that thing was hurting you. I parked down the street and sat there for a long time, watching the porch light flick on automatically as dusk settled in. Tomorrow morning we would all sit in a room together and pretend this was still a family matter. But the doors had closed. The systems were engaged. And there was no going back to silence now. Tuesday morning arrived without ceremony. No calls, no apologies. Just a tight knot of messages, waiting on my phone, and the steady sense that whatever was coming would not slow down for anyone's comfort. I drove to the Mount Lebanon Municipal Building just after 9, the bruise at my temple hidden beneath careful makeup. The lobby smelled faintly of floor cleaner and paper. People moved in and out with forms tucked under their arms, lies intersecting briefly before separating again. This was where things stopped being personal. Attorney Dana Reese met me in a small conference room off the main hallway. She was in her late 40s, precise in her movements, with the kind of calm that comes from knowing systems well enough not to fear them. "We're not accusing anyone of anything today," she said as she laid out a folder. "We're protecting an estate and documenting risk. That distinction matters." I nodded. I had learned quickly that words mattered here, in a different way than they did at a family table. Dana explained the steps as she went. A formal notice to the court noting potential undue influence. A request to preserve the status quo on the estate until questions could be resolved. Documentation of the assault report and medical visit, not as leverage, but as context. "This doesn't decide anything," she said. "It pauses things. It prevents quiet changes. Prevents quiet changes." That phrase stayed with me as I signed where she indicated. By noon, betrayal had been served. I wasn't there when it happened, but I didn't have to be to feel the shift. My phone lit up with messages in quick succession, first from my mother, then from my father, then from betrayal herself. "This is outrageous. How could you do this to us? You've gone too far." Betrayal's message came last. "I never thought you'd actually try to destroy this family." I stared at the screen, the words oddly familiar. For years I'd carried the unspoken responsibility of keeping things intact. Being the one who didn't push, didn't escalate, didn't make scenes. Now that weight had been handed back to where it belonged. Dana called mid-afternoon. "She's contesting the pause," she said. "Says you're unstable. Says your grandfather was confused." "None of that is unusual." "Is it working?" I asked. "No," she said. "But it does mean she's paying attention now." That night I parked a block away from my parents' house and watched as betrayal paced the front lawn with her phone pressed to her ear. Her movements were sharp-clipped. She looked smaller than she had before, not weak or cornered. I didn't feel victorious. I felt exposed. This was the part I hadn't fully prepared for. When truth leaves private spaces, it doesn't travel alone. It brings disruption, noise, people choosing sides before they understand what they're choosing. The will reading was scheduled for the following morning. The pause wouldn't cancel it, Dana had explained, but it would change the room, add structure, add witnesses. Betrayal wanted me to back down. I could feel it in every message, every sharp edge. She was used to pressure working, used to silence returning once things became uncomfortable. I turned my phone off. Sitting in the car, I rested my forehead against the steering wheel and let myself breathe. There was no relief yet. No justice. Just a narrow path forward that required me to keep walking even as the ground shifted. Whatever happened next would happen in public. And there would be no pretending it hadn't started with her hand in my hair and my head against a wall. Wednesday morning began with the kind of quiet that feels rehearsed. I arrived at Caldwell and Reese 10 minutes early and sat alone in the reception area. My hands folded in my lap to keep them from shaking. The office was warm, softly lit, designed to make difficult conversations feel orderly. Framed certificates lined the walls. A small fountain burbled somewhere out of sight. This was where my grandfather's life would be reduced to paperwork. When my parents arrived, they didn't sit with me. They hesitated, then followed betrayal into the conference room as if pulled by habit rather than choice. She walked ahead of them, shoulders back, expression composed. Anyone watching would have assumed she was the one carrying the weight of loss. I took the chair on the opposite side of the long table, alone. Dana Reese entered less calm as ever and closed the door behind her. Before we begin, she said, I want to remind everyone that this meeting is being conducted under court-advised guidelines. We will proceed in an orderly manner. Brielle smiled tightly. My mother nodded. My father stared at the tabletop. The will itself was straightforward at first. Accounts listed, assets named, dates confirmed. My grandfather's voice translated into legal language felt strangely distant. I kept my eyes and my hands, grounding myself in the feel of my wedding ring, the only piece of jewelry I'd worn that day. Then Brielle leaned forward. I need to raise a concern, she said, her tone measured. I believe my sister has been acting under emotional distress. She's been unstable since the funeral. I'm worried she may have misunderstood my grandfather's intentions. There it was, the story she'd prepared. Dana didn't react. She simply nodded. Your concern is noted. My mother glanced at me, her expression tight with worry, or maybe relief that someone else was speaking. My father said nothing. Brielle continued. I've handled my grandfather's affairs for years. He trusted me. I think it's important we acknowledge that. I could feel the old instinct rising, the urge to explain myself, to defend, to prove I wasn't what she was describing. I let it pass. This wasn't a family argument. This was a process. Dana folded her hands. Thank you, Brielle. Before we address any concerns, there is a procedural matter to attend to. She looked directly at my parents. There are materials that must be reviewed by all parties present. They relate to the integrity of this estate. The room shifted, not dramatically, just enough. Brielle's posture stiffened. What materials? She asked. Evidence submitted prior to this meeting, Dana replied. We'll review them together. I didn't look at my sister. I focused instead on my breathing. In through the nose, out through the mouth. I wasn't ready for what came next, but I was ready not to interrupt it. Dana reached for a folder on the table but didn't open it yet. Before we proceed, she said, I want to be clear. This is not an accusation, it's an examination. Brielle laughed softly. Of course. But I saw it then, the flicker in her eyes. The first crack in the certainty she'd worn all week. This room had rules, witnesses, structure. She couldn't control the narrative here the way she had at the kitchen table or in the hallway. I realized in that moment what my mistake had been before. I'd thought truth alone would be enough. That once spoken, it would naturally take its place. But truth needs context. It needs timing. It needs a space where it can't be talked over. This was that space. Dana opened the folder, and for the first time since the funeral, everyone in that room had no choice but to look in the same direction. Dana didn't rush. She turned the folder so my parents could see the first page, then slid it across the table toward Brielle. Her movements were slow and deliberate, the way you handle something fragile that could cut you if you grab it wrong. This is a copy of notes Harold Hayes made, she said. They were entrusted to a third party. They reference repeated attempts to pressure him regarding his will. My mother's fingers tightened around her tissue. My father's jaw clenched. Brielle scanned the page, and for a second her face stayed smooth. Then her eyes flicked one quick dart toward the bureau, like her body was checking for exits before her mind admitted it needed one. That could be anything, she said lightly. He was forgetful. He wrote things down all the time. Dana nodded as if she'd expected that. That's why we have more than notes. She reached under the table and lifted a slim tablet onto the tabletop, setting it in the center, where no one could pretend not to see it. The screen was dark for a beat, reflecting our faces back at us, 4 versions of grief and 1 version of control. I want to be clear, Dana said, her voice even. This video was submitted through proper channels. The timestamp is visible. The file has been preserved. Brielle's laugh came out too sharp. A video of what Dana didn't answer her directly. She looked at my parents. "You will recognize the property and the people involved," she said. "I'm asking everyone to watch without interruption." My mother's breath hitched. My father's eyes dropped, then lifted again, like he couldn't decide whether ignorance was still an option. Dana pressed play. The image appeared grainy, fixed angled toward the driveway. The timestamp glowed in the corner. Sunday night. I saw myself step into frame, one hand braced against the side of the house. Then Brielle followed, fast and sure. Even from a distance I could see the force in her movements, the way her hand went to my hair, the way my head snapped back. The impact wasn't loud in the recording, but it didn't need to be. My body crumpled. The shape of me on the ground was unmistakable. My mother made a sound that wasn't a word. My father's face went gray. Brielle's chair scraped as she stood halfway, then stopped. Her mouth opened, then closed. She looked at my parents as if she expected them to rescue her from what they were seeing. Dana paused the video at the moment Brielle stepped away and left me there. Silence filled the room like smoke. "This is the hallway incident referenced in the report," Dana said calmly. "It aligns with the medical documentation. It also speaks to intent." Brielle shook her head hard, as if she could dislodge reality. "That's not," she started, then swallowed. "You're twisting it." She fell. She was upset. "I tried to." My father pushed back his chair. The legs screeched against the floor. He didn't look at me. He didn't look at Dana. He looked at Brielle like he was seeing his daughter for the first time. "Brielle," he said, his voice hoarse. "What did you do?" My mother's hands were trembling so badly she couldn't hold the tissue anymore. It fluttered down to the table. She stared at the paused image, then at Brielle, and something broke across her face. Shock turning into recognition, like the last 10 years had rearranged themselves in a single instant. Brielle took one step back, then another. Her skin had gone pale. The confident color drained out of her cheeks. She pressed her hand to the edge of the table like it was the only solid thing left. "I didn't," she whispered. "I didn't." And then she sank. Her knees buckled, her body folding in on itself, and she collapsed to the carpeted floor. No one moved for a moment. Not because we didn't know what to do. Because the truth finally seen had stunned all of us into stillness, and the will reading hadn't even finished yet. The room didn't return to normal after Brielle was helped out. There was no easy reset for what had been seen. Dana recessed the meeting, citing medical concern and the need to proceed correctly. The will reading resumed later that afternoon, with fewer words and more gravity. My grandfather's instructions were carried out exactly as written, without commentary or flourish. There was no room left for interpretation. Justice, I learned, doesn't always arrive with a verdict. Sometimes it arrives as clarity that cannot be undone. In the days that followed, consequences unfolded the way systems do, methodically, without malice. The pause in the estate remained in place while the court reviewed the materials. Brielle's objections were formally denied. The documentation she had relied on lost its power once the full record was considered. The locks on the house were ordered returned to their original state. Access was restored not as a favor, but as a right. The assault report moved forward, not quickly, not dramatically, but forward. Enough that it mattered. My parents didn't call at first. When they did, their voices sounded older, smaller. They asked questions they should have asked years ago. I answered some, I declined others. I didn't argue, I didn't console. I set terms instead. We met once weeks later in a public cafe near the courthouse. I told them I would allow limited contact initiated by me, and only if they didn't try to rewrite what had happened. They agreed without pushing. It wasn't forgiveness, it was structure. Brielle didn't reach out, Through my attorney, I learned she had retained her own counsel and was advised to remain silent. The confidence she'd worn for so long no longer protected her. The story she'd controlled was no longer hers to tell. I returned to my grandfather's house alone one Saturday morning. The porch chair was where I left it. The cabinet in the den stood closed, its contents restored. I opened the window and let the air move through rooms that had held too much quiet for too long. I kept the house not as a monument, but as a boundary, a place where truth had been honored when it mattered. Healing didn't arrive all at once. It came in small decisions, in sleeping through the night, in no longer rehearsing conversations that would never happen, in understanding that being believed didn't require me to perform pain. What I lost was the illusion of a family that would protect me no matter what. What I kept was myself. And that turned out to be enough. If this story resonated with you, you're not alone. Many people discovered too late that silence was never safety. Share your thoughts or experiences below. And if you'd like to hear more stories about justice, family, and healing, consider following along. There's another story waiting.